Hello, you guys. I wanted to get started a little bit early. I know, shocker. Somebody was like, "We'll see you in a year." Come on, you guys. Um, so I actually think I'm going to do two lives today. I want to do the Ballerina Farm live. So I figured since I want to relax with that live and not have the pressure of this one on my shoulders, that I would start with this live just a little bit early so that I can have a more chill live later where I can y'all can come up and I can really talk to you. If you guys are not completely wasted after after this live. So, this is going back to Project 2025. Again, we are breaking that down. And we're doing the Department of Education today. All right, so let's get into it. We won't delay. Hello, Rosie. Hi, Lorraine. Hello to all of you guys. Kanza, I am Simon, all of you. Okay. So I'll say the same thing I said last time. This is good because it has a lot of the colors on it. And all right. Yellow just is information that I want to cover in general. Green are things that I agree with. Red are things I do not agree with. Blue are things I'm unsure about. And purple are things that I'm like, for real, y'all, you guys are tripping. So that is how my color coordination goes. So again, we are doing the section on Department of Education. This is like a lot of ranting. I told you guys that happens a lot. All right. So they rant a lot. So that is why I didn't get into all this. We don't need to read that. I mean, you can, but I'm not about to read it. I already read it once. Okay, advancing educational freedom. So what they mean about this is they want to have portability in the federal education spending so that families can fund directly or through tax credits. Um, Let me rephrase that. They want to incentivize families contributing to education. And they want to do that by allowing federal tax credits to encourage those sorts of contributions. It would only be for K through 12 education, though. And the next thing they want to do, and these are things that I agree with, is they want to provide choice, right? And they want to specifically look at military children. If you are a military brat, as they call them, you know how difficult this can be. Or children that are connected to military families, those who are living in DC, those who are part of tribes, so Native American families. They want the responsibility for those children, right, to be housed in agencies that are already serving those families. So, for example, the Native Americans, their money would go to the Native Americans for their education of their children. Military, they would have a pocket of money for military children, right? Washington, D.C. is not a part of the United States. So D.C. would have a pot of money and they would serve their own children. I agree with that. It just makes good sense, right? They can nuance it much more because the military knows the challenges that military children face. Native American tribes should have control over the education of their own children. If there's monies for that, give it to the tribes. Let the tribes educate their own. They're supposed to be sovereign anyway. Same thing for Washington, D.C. It's not even in the United States. Let them manage their stuff. Restoring state and local control over education funding. So a lot of this, like I was saying yesterday, is just returning power back to the states. So this is exactly what they want to do. They want Washington to kind of get out of education as much as they can. They want to send the money directly to the states in the form of grants, and the states can just do what they will with their education system. I think this is a great idea. Defederalize it. So like I said, a lot of this in Project 2025 is just making government less, federal government less overreaching, less intrusive on state rights, which is how it's supposed to operate. The states are supposed to operate like mini countries, and the federal government is supposed to be focused on interstate commerce, any rights that do not fall to the states. And so they're trying to take it back to there. They want to treat taxpayers like investors in federal student aid. So we pay taxes. And I guess now when I think about this, I disagreed with some of the points on this. You'll see them in red. But to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I might change some of my red things to green, because the way they want us to look at federal student aid is if you are a taxpayer, your dollars are what are funding when kids want to go to college and their families don't have money and they take out a loan. That money comes from tax dollars. So they want to give us a return on our investment, meaning they want people to pay. They want people to pay because the investors in the federal student loan aid have put money in and they expect to get their money back and make a little money on top. That is how they're thinking of it. So I've got to decide where I stand. Do I want to stand with that? Because if I do, then a lot of the stuff that I put in red in this section, I'm going to have to flip on. Or do I believe that a level of education, I don't know, it's hard because there are some professions, where I believe in I mean, I don't want to get into it because they get into it later, but I believe in incentivizing. If we have an area of need, let's say we need a lot of chemical engineers. Nobody wants to go out for chemical engineering. I'm for people going into that field, and if they complete their degree, they complete their master's, I'm okay with forgiving part of those student loans because we needed people to go into that field. Do you follow me? Like if we have a teacher shortage, after somebody completes their master's and they are teaching, I'm okay with forgiving those loans. That would be the antithesis of treating taxpayers like investors in federal student aid. I would like to see a little bit of both. Like most people just need to pay, but I would like to see exceptions. I put it in green though, so you know. Protecting the federal student loan portfolio from predatory politicians. The new administration must end abuses in the loan forgiveness programs. Can I say the word? Borrowers should be expected to repay their loans. Again, I do believe in forgiving some types of loans, as I said. So that's why I put it in red. I think it's more nuanced than that. Enforcement of civil rights should be based on a proper understanding of those laws, rejecting gender ideology and critical race theory. Let's be clear. When they bring up the civil rights, right, and enforcing them, they feel whites are being discriminated against, to be clear. Even though that's not what the laws were written for, that's what they're referring to. It goes on to talk about Title I, Part A, which provides federal funding for lower income school districts to the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically for the administration of for children and families. It should be administered as a no strings attached formula block grant. Those of you who are not familiar with what this is talking about, I'm going to tell you just a wee bit about it. I'm actually going to pull up that Title I funding. So that I can read you the exact wording of what it's for. Okay. So if you have, and I mean, this is kind of going over the same thing. That funding for those school districts that are lower income, specifically, what they want to do is they want to move that funding elsewhere so that, again, the states can become responsible for what it is they do with that money. Now, people who criticize this, what they are worried about, which I don't really understand, it doesn't make sense, is that, there might be waste in spending. But this is what I'm going to say. We have way more control, right? We have way more control over our local governments than we do the federal government. And this is why I personally am okay with these monies going as a block grant to states. Because at the end of the day, you can go to a school board meeting. You can go and deal with the California Department of Education or your state's Department of Education. Those people are accessible to you. They are in your state. You can hold your local officials to a level of accountability that you cannot hold the federal government to. So, even though this is controversial to some people, like the criticisms of it are, you really just going to give the states the money and let them, educate their own? Yes, absolutely. The federal government doesn't need to do that. And if people want their statesmen to act right, we need to start being involved in local government. Um, they basically, so I want to just back up a little bit. So, OAESE, they manage the Federal Impact Aid Program, and it provides all of these funds to school districts to compensate for, let's say, if you don't have a lot of homeowners in your area. So, or you're not getting good property taxes because the homes are not worth much. Or, military families and tribal families. So, they want to strike a bunch of things, right? So if there's impact aid that is not directly tied to students, they want to cut it off. Again, they want to trim a lot of fat. They want to trim a lot of fat. And I guess because I homeschool, I'm really comfortable with this because I know how much it takes to properly educate a child. And it doesn't take that much money. Okay, it just really doesn't. So our education system can be way more efficient. There are countries who use way more money in education per student and provide a higher quality of education than United States. We just need to do better and we need to cut bloat. And I don't want to Listen, Imma just keep it 1,000. And I know a lot of educators are gonna be upset with me, but, like, the conferences like, conferences are a wonderful example. Educators at every level, the districts pay them to go to conferences. These conferences are normally in really cool places. They pay for the hotel, they pay for the flight, and educators by the tens of thousands, the millions are just I mean, maybe there's not millions of educators, but by the tens of thousands, right? You know how much money that is that's not going to students? Cut the bloat. Cut the bloat. And there are many things like that that I could point at that are just a huge waste of money. I've never gone to an educator conference, and I have a child that speaks 5 languages. I have 2 teenagers that read at a college level. I have a 15-year-old starting college this year, and I've never gone to an educational conference. I don't know why tens of thousands of teachers need their flights, hotels, and per diems paid for. So, yeah, cut the bloat. So, they're pretty ruthless. They wanna just cut, 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 and anything that they are not cutting, they want to put as a block grant and put the onus on the states to take care of that. And I really don't see a problem with it. Now, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and change this because now that I think about it, I'm with it. Like I said, I'm changing my mind kind of as we're going. The thing is, there are other ways to skin that cat, right? So let me ask you this. What is more cost effective? Instead of sending teachers all over the country and paying for hotels and paying for food and paying for flights, what would be more effective is if there is a training that needs to be done, and I don't know if you've ever been I've actually listen, I know what goes on at these conferences, but this is what I'll say. It is a new day. We have modern technology. The presenters can Zoom, and individual schools or districts can host in their own buildings their teachers' ability to participate in these conferences. There's literally no reason with the way we are in 2024 for us to have to fly tens of thousands of teachers all over the country and pay for hotels and food and transport and all of this stuff, right? When modern technology could make that so much cheaper. For sure, we could cut this cost down by the millions in a school district near you, right? So I do hear that they shouldn't have to pay, and I agree with you, but I also think that they are not engaging in the most cost-effective way to keep teachers up on their training. I think, the money's free, so they're just, doing it. And I know teachers that go to tons of these a year. It's like it's too much. I don't understand it. I think it's a waste of money. Okay, well, okay, wait. I'm not going to say that that's not valid. All I was saying is that I homeschool and I don't spend nearly as much money every year on supplies and materials to homeschool my children, right? That's all that I'm saying. Per child, I am able to teach my children on a very small budget. I don't need tens of thousands of dollars to teach them. And so there are more efficient and less expensive ways to teach our children. I just am going to be honest with you. I think that there's a lot of people who are worried about the wrong thing in education. There are many teachers that are there because they are passionate and they want to teach, but there's so much bureaucracy and bloat that the teachers that really want to teach can't do it. They cannot. Let's see. It says funding to institutions should be block granted and narrowed to historically Black colleges and universities. So this is for post-secondary education. So we were just doing K through 12, right? Um, and now we're going into post-secondary. Other thing I want to touch on through K through 12 is it says they want to phase out earmarks for a variety of special institutions as originally envisioned. I have this in red because I don't know what the heck they're talking about. It's too vague, and they might want to phase out something that is valuable. And so, because they're being vague, I'm not agreeing with that. It says funding to institutions should be block granted and narrow to historically Black colleges and universities and tribally controlled colleges. Honestly, this is really interesting to me because a lot of people have portrayed Project 2025 as sexist and racist. And what I will say is, what in our last live stream on Project 2025, they wanted to give poor women free doulas, pay women money that would go to childcare providers if they decided to stay home with their children, or allow them to use that money to pay a close relative because they were worried about children's safety. And they wanted stringent reporting and mandatory reporting on abortions and medication procedures to ensure that we are keeping women safe. Now, the only post-secondary money that they want to give out is to Black people and Native Americans. They're basically saying, we don't want to give money to any other post-secondary education unless they're Black or Native. Now, I mean, I don't know what to say, but that doesn't really sound super, super racist to me, right? Oh, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. You could just raise teacher salaries. I mean, there are better ways to use that money. And maybe money would be freed up for bonuses to teachers if, right? If they knew that, like, they are accountable. Because again, with the federal government managing this by returning the power to the states, you can go to your local school board meeting and check some people. These are people that live in your community. Parents can get together and really push back to make sure our children are having a good education when we know that the money is in the hands of the states. So it goes on to say that they want to move programs that are deemed important to national security interests to the Department of State. So there'll be some levels of post-secondary education that are going to move to the Secretary or the Department of State. So now these are some getting into the federal student aid program. It says the next administration should completely reverse the student loan federalization of 2010 and work with Congress to spin off FSA and its student loan obligations to a new government corporation with professional governance and management. Okay. Some slick stuff that they do try in Project 2025 a lot is they want to privatize a lot of things. Now, I am not for privatization of many things. There are a lot of things I really feel it is important to not see privatized. So, and the reason I say this is because corporations are not great people. They're just not. And at the end of the day, we have seen so many countries where infrastructure has been privatized, where electricity has been privatized, where water has been privatized, you will have people literally living right by a river with no water because the river is privately owned. That is how corporations roll. You only have to look at a country where nobody cares about regulating corporations to see that these people do not care. They do not care. They do not care about us. They do not care about what's going on with us. They only care about themselves. So I think that, when they're giving recommendations in here about wanting to privatize with a spinoff FSA and taking those loan obligations into a uh, new government corporation that has professional governance, like wanting to bring in third parties, private individuals. I think this is just a money grab. Like when people write stuff like this, I promise you they know who they want to hire for those positions. They know who they want to hire for those positions. They know who they want the professional governance to be, right? So I'm not really for spin-off corporations with professional governance and management. I don't really agree with that. It says with a statutory charge that it preserve the federal student loan portfolio for the benefit of the taxpayers. And see, this is why I said I was on the fence about this is why I said I was on the fence about where is it? This right here. Because that really opens up a Pandora's box. And you can see it cracking open here. It opens up this Pandora's box. So it's going to be a spin-off corporation because now the taxpayers are being treated like investors. It's going to be professionally run by people that are appointed by a board of by people like a board of trustees, a governing body that the president handpicks. I don't know. I'm uncomfortable with that. I can see that being really rife with a lot of abuse, being a great way to give somebody a job and have a little quick money grab. I'm not really in love with that. It's one of the things that I'm really against. Congress should pass and the next president should sign a Department of Education Reorganization Act. And basically, I skipped all over this because they're being petty. Like, it's just a bunch of stuff that they don't like that Biden did, and they would like it to all go away. The new administration must take immediate steps to rescind the new requirements and lessen the federal restrictions on charter schools. I actually somewhat agree with this. I do feel charter schools are important. I think I told you guys that Mr. has consulted on and opened a charter school. So he's consulted on charter school openings and with charter schools, and he's opened a charter school. And charter schools can be really valuable. In a lot of places, charter schools outperform the public schools. Civil rights data collection. On December 13th, 2021, OCR published a notice concerning proposed revisions to OCR's mandatory civil rights data collection, in which it proposed to create and collect data on a new non-binary sex category, in addition to the current male-female sex categories, and to retire data collection that indicates the number of high school level interscholastic athletic sports in which only male and female students participate. And in addition to that, high school level athletic teams in which only male or female students participate, and participants on high school level interscholastic athletic sports teams in which only male or female students participate. That was a weird combination. Um, and essentially, they just want to rescind all that. Like, we're not doing non binary. You're a man or you're a woman. You're male or you're female. There's nothing non binary about it. And I agree with this. I don't see anything controversial there. We're not doing non binary. That's not happening. Something I did not really agree with, it says the next administration should also rescind the Dear Colleague letter and its letters to accreditation agencies dated July 19th, 2022, which are attempts to undercut Florida's blah, blah, blah. Look, I just think this is like another one of those areas where it's like a little too petty and specific for me. I understand conservatives wrote this. I am a conservative. I'm not a Republican, but I am a conservative. But really, we're just caping out for Florida. Is that what the federal government is doing? If we want to look at accreditation on the whole, okay, let's look at that. But we're not going to make changes for one state. Now, I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with rescinding it. I'm saying that this is a poor reason to want to pull back on that. Like, give better reasons. We're not playing favorites with Republican states because at the end of the day, the president's job is to serve the entire country. And that does also include trash liberal states, not just the states that we like. And so I think it's just a little bit shaky to like single out one state that we know has been very, very, controversial. And I agree with a lot of what happened in Florida, and I disagree with some of what happened in Florida. But for us to single that state out as the benchmark for why something needs to be rescinded, yeah, there's 49 other states. So they're gonna need to come a little better. Can your perspective really be fair if Mr. has a personal interest or stake in charter schools? Let me see if I can find something. Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say this. I'm going to have biases. I'm not going to deny that. Um, Based on many things, based on my socioeconomic status, based on my gender, based on my religion. You know what I'm saying? So I want to just say that, that's all of us. The totality of who we are is colored, or I should say colors our opinions. So I don't know. I would think that it's fair, but I would say that when Mr. Started his charter school, so can we go back to that? Um, when Mr. started his charter school, it was a school that was meant to be for Black males. So it was K through 12 education specifically for Black males. This wants to lessen the federal restrictions on charter schools. He was told by the state of California that he could not exclusively serve Black males. So their charter school had to serve everybody. So I guess, yeah, I might be tainted by, my own experience. I think that there should be less restrictions. Like maybe a charter school only wants to serve females, wants to have an all female school. Do you follow what I'm saying? So I think those restrictions should be lifted. I also think that if education monies are going directly to states in the form of block grants, then states have more flexibility to allow spaces that are more nuanced, right? You might have a charter school that specifically caters to students who have English as a second language, and everything in that school can be formulated around their development in a unique way versus being an offset of an English speaking school. So, yeah, could that just be an example for all states? Nah, y'all know what Florida was doing. Come on. Florida was going off the chain with a lot of things that they were doing with schools on every level. So they're not using that as an example for all states because really no states were doing what Florida was doing. But I do like the fact that you're being fair-minded for sure. Oh, you said because they only take high performing students? Ah, see, listen, hold on. And I don't see anything wrong with only taking high performing students. Let me just keep it 1,000. Q Butter and I have often talked about this. Um, because I have and I've been like, why do we mix high performing students and students that need more assistance? Because I feel like on one thing you can say the synergy of them being in the class together, that it helps the students that need more assistance. On the other hand, you can say that because of the pacing of the class, those higher performing students are actually being held back in their education because the class is not flowing the way it could if they were with other students that were high performing. I Q Butter is of the mix them all together category. I say separate them. This is my personal opinion. I'm okay with only accepting high performing students at a school. I think that that is okay. And I think there can be another school that can focus on low performing students. And I think that is okay too. I don't see a problem with it. You know what? I think for special needs students, I would like to see nuanced education. When you go to a regular school, right? There's a standard of education, and it's just like the blanket standard of education. If there was a school that specifically catered to, let's say, students with physical disabilities, not mental disabilities, but physical disabilities, now, it is a parent's choice. You don't force the kids to go to that school, but it's a parent's choice to send that kid to those schools. That would mean that you would have an entire school where everything was there to cater to physically disabled children, right? A school that had no steps whatsoever, not one step, right? A school that had all their bathrooms were wheelchair accessible, right? A school where Braille was on everything, right? Because it is catering to a variety of students, and they don't need to worry about accommodating able bodied people. They only need to worry about accommodating disabled people. And again, students would not have to go to those schools, but could you imagine having the option to go to a school where everything is tailored to suit your needs? Versus being the odd one out at a school where they are just like sort of throwing things in here and there to suit your needs. Imagine a school for students with learning disabilities where every single teacher was highly trained in dealing with students that have dyslexia, attention deficit disorder, right? Or struggle with patterns of speech, things like that. And every class and everything in that school was tailored to those types of students. Can you imagine every experience a child has in their school tailored to making sure that them in the position they are in learns well versus being sequestered off into a little corner of a bigger school and being made to feel like the odd one out and getting substandard treatment because everything in the school doesn't serve you. Again, I don't think you should force children, right, to do that. But if you take the reins off a little bit, the opportunities for education are endless. Oh, What if we had a school called the School of Kinesthetic Learners, right? And it is a school completely geared toward kinesthetic learners. Your child comes in, they get tested. If they test as a kinesthetic learner, when they come in, everything is active there. Nobody ever has to really sit at a desk because, kinesthetic learners, they need to do to learn, right? Oh, what if we had a school and it was titled, the School of Visual Education, and everything, like every single lesson, every single math class, every single reading class, um uh every single science class, there were always visuals, right? Everything was delivered with visuals because what they are looking for in that school is, do you have a child that is a visual learner? Now, at the Ziyex Institute, a lot of my students or parents of my students will tell you that what I will often do is I will give an assignment and I will allow children to respond to the assignment in the way they're most comfortable. So, I will say, if you can just demonstrate learning through art, you can give me an art project. If you would rather write, you can write something, right? If you would rather just talk about it, you can talk about something. Just demonstrate understanding because so many kids learn so many different ways. Some parents, I will even like, they'll say, oh, my child, this is their strength. And I'll say, okay, well, they can turn in the work to me differently. Right. So I think if we take the reins off of education a little bit, and I think that's also, it's not, somebody said earlier, well, it's maybe because of your socioeconomic background or because your children have, college, a parent that's college educated or whatever that is. I don't think that that's the case. I think that the reason my children thrive in a homeschool setting is I know that one of my children is very data driven. I know that I have a child that learns better with visuals. I know that I have a child that does better with like worksheets or being, in a book, right? So I can look at my children and I will tailor their lesson to them versus being in a class with 30 kids who learn differently, who have different needs. Some of them are wiggly because they're kinesthetic learners. They can't sit still. So then they get told that they have ADHD, when reality, they're just a kinesthetic learner and they cannot sit there for an hour at a spell. You know what I mean? So I think, yes, my opinion could be colored a little bit because Mr. has dealt with charter schools and has opened a charter school. But also, I think that it's just practical to just loosen up a bit, allow schools to open that can do the thing that public schools can't, and allow parents to choose to go to those schools. You know what I mean? So that's a great question. That's why it's good that the state has the funding, right? Because if the state has the funding, like I said, you right now, Murder Magic Tricks, you right now can go to a school board meeting and speak to the board. You right now have a lot of control over what goes over locally, and that's why it's better. Okay, let's see. So they want to remove the non-binary sex category. I'm all about that. I said why I didn't agree with that. They want sex to only mean biological sex. That's dope. I'm with that. And that will extend to all programming. And they want to make sure that faith-based educational institutions, programs, and activities are protected because they're going to be non-affirming and they need to be allowed to be non-affirming. This is a little bit shaky for me. It says the Trump administration's 2020 Title for no, this is Title IX regulation protected the foundational rights to due process for those who are accused of sexual misconduct. The Biden administration proposed to change the interpretation of Title IX to dispose of these rights. There is a right of due process for people accused of sexual misconduct, but I think unfortunately, um, if you are accused of sexual misconduct, you should be put on leave pending an investigation because nobody has time to be worried about if the right thing is happening or not. It says the next administration should abandon this change, redefining sex to mean sexual orientation and gender identity in Title IX immediately across all departments. I agree with that. On the first day in office, come on now. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done on the first day in office. Like we have whole countries in the middle of wars. We got a lot of serious stuff going on. I don't know if the first day that the president comes in office, they need to just redefine sex to be understood as a fixed biological fact. And then do an official notice and comment on top of that. Like, okay, let's do it. Like, I'm all for doing it, but really, day one, I'm sure we have more important things to do day one. At the same time, the political appointees for the Office of Civil Rights should begin a full review of all Title IX investigations that were conducted on the understanding that sex referred to gender identity or sexual orientation. I mean, I do agree that this stuff needs to happen, but I don't know if it needs to happen on the very first day, like maybe day 2 or 3. I don't know. It says all ongoing investigations should be dropped and all school districts affected should be given notice they are free to drop any policy changes pursued under the pressure from the Biden administration. I mean, I don't know if we need to word it like that, but yeah, because that kind of wording I think is just contentious. Drop it. Sex is fixed, it's biological. There are protections for religious institutions. You don't have to conform. Period. We don't need all the extra verbiage. Drop any policy changes that were pursued under the pressure from the Biden administration. Like all the pettiness is not needed. It says the OCR Assistant Secretary should prepare to report a report of OCR's actions for the new Secretary of Education, who should, by speech or letter, publicize the nature of the overreach engaged by his. No. See, let me put this in red. Why? Why do we have to do that? I don't what would be ridiculous and what would be very divisive for the country and what they keep suggesting in this 2025. I agree with a lot of the policies. I don't agree in like rubbing mud in people's faces, right? I don't agree with that. You know that the Skittles committee is highly prone to emotionality. The changing of the laws is going to be traumatic enough for them. I don't know if we need to rub salt in the wound by making a whole statement, right? That publicizes the nature of the overreach engaged in by their predecessor. Like, that's not necessary. That's not necessary at all. That's just doing too much, right? It goes on to say the secretary should make it clear that FERPA allows parents full access to their children's educational records. So any practice of paperwork I cannot say it. I'm not going to try. I know what the word is, but I actually can't pronounce this word. On the front violates federal law. So you cannot play cloak and dagger. This is probably going to be mostly surrounding around the Skittles committee and transgenderism. It could also be applied to birth control and things like that. There's just a lot of situations in which schools will be giving kids medication, will be, calling them Bob when their name is Sally. There's a lot of things, especially in liberal states, that schools will do and withhold from the parents and keep out of the official records. Like if you went to order your child's records, they would intentionally keep that away from you. All right, let's go. Unfortunately, the federal outreach has pushed many school leaders to prioritize the pursuit of racial parity in school discipline indicators, such as detention, suspensions, and expulsions, over student safety. In 2014, the Obama administration issued a Dear Colleague letter that muddied the standard for civil rights enforcement under Title VI for student discipline cases. Before the DCL, a school would be in violation of federal law for treating Black and white students differently for the same offense, disparate treatment. Under the Obama administration, schools were at risk of losing federal funding if they treated Black and white students equally, but had to aggregate differences in the rates of school discipline by race. They want to end this. Here's my problem. Here's my problem. Some of these kids are just bad, okay? Did you guys see the footage of Oakland where it was like 5, 6, I don't know, it was a lot, 7, it was a lot of what appeared to be, it was dark, so I couldn't tell, young men all shooting guns at another group of young men. I've never seen anything like it. Somebody caught it on camera. Some kids are just bad and unruly. Now, for me, when a child is bad and unruly, it makes me think that something is going on in their home, right? And I have a lot of compassion for children that are malbehaved because clearly something is wrong there because they are children. So, but still, some kids are just bad, you know? Some kids have lived a life where they try to act like little adults. Some children are actually dangerous. Like, I get it. And some children can be viewed as bad, even if they do something that is equal to a counterpart that does not look like them. So, for example, attractive children tend to get into less trouble than ugly children, and some children are ugly. In the same way that people, and psychology says that people naturally attach positive traits to attractive people. So that if an ugly person does something and an attractive person does the same thing, and all things, other things being created equal, other than their ugliness or attractiveness, it is very likely the ugly person will be looked at more negatively, right? Those kind of biases are real. So my problem is, how do you vet out a bad kid from a kid that could be behaving in a similar way to another child, but because of their appearance or because of the way they talk, and I'm not just talking about Black children, or because of some attribute about them, right? They are more prone to being considered problematic. I mean, that's like a real thing. It should be the same consequences for the same offense, but that's not always the case. So, especially in a school where there is not a majority Black student population, so going back to race, because that's what this is dealing with, If you have very few black people in your school and all of them are the ones that are getting in trouble, one argument is all the black kids are bad. Another argument could be all the black children are punished more or perceived as worse. Without being boots on the ground in the school, you can't really tell the difference. So I don't know that I necessarily agree with this because what this means is that we believe there's a level of purity in action in those people who are passing down discipline. And the reality is there's simply not purity in action in every case. We can't guarantee that, and we cannot necessarily work on the assumption that it exists. I also don't believe we should work on the assumption that it does not exist. I think we should accept that people do have biases, and those biases are not limited to race, right? They're not limited to race. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Those are the grades I teach. Yes. Or, Brother Q, speaking of teachers, he told me an interesting story. He wears his like grill and he's got dreadlocks and like all the stuff, right? And street clothes. And he was saying how the reaction that people have to him when he looks like that versus when he puts on a suit and tie and does that whole thing is very different. And I agree. I will say, as a woman, the reaction I get when I wear my hair down and I'm wearing a flowy dress, the behavior and treatment I get is very different from if I wear a sweatsuit. Now I don't actually own a sweatsuit, but if I wear something more casual, I don't own jeans either, but you get what I'm saying. If I were to put on a hoodie, I do have some hoodies. I have two, I know I have one hoodie. If I wear my hoodie and a pair of leggings, I definitely am treated differently than if I have on a beautiful dress and my hair is done nice. You know what I mean? Like, people just have biases. It just is what it is. If a man approaches me in a three-piece suit, my reaction to him is very different if a man approaches me in like pants that are hanging off his butt and, a shirt with a big gun on it and, a hat and some glasses. Do you know what I mean? Like, right or wrong, it doesn't mean that the guy that looks like that is a bad person, but the reality is we have biases. And we need to recognize that those biases don't stop because you're somebody's teacher. All right. Getting the federal government out of the business of dictating school discipline policy is a good start. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that the government cannot track it. Although, arguably, the states should be tracking it. So, if anything, you know what would be better? For this to just not exist at all. If there was any intellectual honesty at all, the government would just completely get out of it. And each school district or each state could decide what is appropriate for their student populations. But this seems dishonest to me because the government does want to do something, they just don't want to do this, right? So what I say is get out of it altogether. So this is what I mean. In addition to rescinding the policy, they want them to clarify the regulations. The government either wants skin in the game or not. If you're saying on one hand, get the federal government out of the business of dictating, then stop dictating. Don't dictate anything. Dictate nothing at all. Okay, let's see. All right. My husband just sent me something. It says, "Never seek revenge. Rotten fruit will fall all by itself." Those of you who know, you know what that's about. Okay. Although it will require political capital from the White House, given that the mainstream news outlets are for sure to frame it as an attack on civil rights, because that's what it is, the next conservative administration should take sweeping action to assure that the purpose of the Civil Rights Act is not inverted through a disparate impact standard to provide a pretext for theoretically endless federal meddling. I mean, that's what it is, though. Now, let me be clear. I think some of this stuff is really out of control. Like, I was at a because you guys know I do a lot of I have to raise a lot of money. I was I was waxing lyrical about that yesterday. And so I was at, one of our funders meetings because they have a new grant cycle that's coming out, and they funded us before. And so we were invited out, and and I'm in this circle, right? So first of all, I'm sitting at a table. And most of the people that serve the Black community are not Black. They're white organizations. So I'm sitting at a table and I recognize the name on a woman's badge of the organization she's with. And it's an organization that adopts out children from the foster care system. And some months ago, we had approached them and said, "Hey, we hold this annual event. There are lots of Black families there, right? Why don't you come?" Because they're pretty, let me tell you, it's pretty wild. Like they'll put up like actual pictures of children, y'all, like actual pictures of children, and be like, basically adopt me like a puppy. So we were like, "Look, you have Black children in your system, and we have access to lots of Black families. Why don't you come to our event? And that might be an opportunity to pair up some of these children with Black families, right?" And it just never happened. The team fell out. What we really wanted to do was we wanted to connect Black children who were going through the adoption process, often ending up in homes without any Black people in them, in an area with very few Black people, right? Get them connected in with the Black community in a healthy way. And her team really didn't follow through. So we were sitting at the table and I was like, "Hey, your team and I were talking." And she was like, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "What were you guys talking about?" And so I basically told her all the things that I told you. I was like, my husband, he has a mentoring organization for young Black males. We do an event every year for Black girls. Over at the center, we have all of these family building programs. And I know a lot of the Black children are going into white homes, but we serve families that have Black children in them so they can still participate in the programs and blah, 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 blah. And she goes, "We are a very white," now this is a white liberal for you. "We are just very white. All of our people are white." Like she was saying it like apologizing. I'm like, "Lady, chill. Like most people out here are white. So it would follow that your agency would be very white. I don't need the apology, right?" So then, but it's like, okay, I mean, I get it. It was very uncomfortable for me because I'm like, "Ma'am, all I was trying to do is just pick up the conversation. You're off into left field talking about your whiteness and like the whiteness of your organization. Like, I don't know what any of that has to do with what I'm talking about. I just want to connect in so we can serve the Black children that your organization deals with. I don't need like the extra levels of white guilt, right?" But I was like, "Okay, this has gotten a little weird and awkward, but okay, let's move on," right? So then we go, they explain the grant. They're like, da 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 da. And they're like, "Okay, you can only apply for one pathway for this grant. So and so is going to be on this side of the room. So and so is going to be on that side of the room. So and so is going to be on that side of the room. And go to the respective areas that you're interested in." So me and the chick that I'm partnered with, I'm like, "Okay," she's like, "I'm gonna take this side." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna take that area." because the other areas didn't apply to the work we do. So now I'm in the group circle, right? So we're sitting in the group circle, and, you know, it's just a weird situation. Everybody's white, right? It's like all white people and like three black people. And so, um, but they are specifically looking to serve underserved populations. So this woman, who for all intents and purposes is a white woman, short, fat, completely white woman, but I could tell she was trying to be a little saucy because she had on beaded earrings. And in this area, there's a whole lot of very white people who think that they're Native American, but they are like white. So anyway, she starts talking, claiming Native American and saying she wants to develop a curriculum, blah, blah, blah. Would that fit into the grant? So another white woman from across the circle goes, "Hey, we're already doing that. We're working with so and so of the such and such tribe." And she's like, "Who are you working with?" She's like, "So and so." She's like, "I don't know her." And it would be impossible for me not to know somebody, because apparently she just knows all the Native. And that's how you knew. That is how you know that she was not Native American, because black people. Let me ask you something, black people. Do you know all the black people in your area? Cuz I sure don't. I don't know. There are 10,000 black people in this area, and I don't know them. Okay? I don't know them. But it would take a whole white person to make the claim that they know every possible Indian person, Native American person in the area. And then she goes, "I'm not here, I'm only here to talk to other people of color." And I'm looking at her like, "Woman, if you weren't over here ranting about being Native American, you would look white. If you have to announce that you are not white, then you are white. If you have to make a declaration to be a person of color, then you're white. People of color don't need to make declarations." I don't even like the term people of color. I'm just saying, you know? So, what is my point? 'Cause my point is that, yes, civil rights advocacy and equity and inclusion has reached retarded proportions. I mean, retarded. This stuff is crazy, man. If I have to listen to one more, I cannot go and do business anywhere without giving a land acknowledgement. I threw an event. I did like a conversation on belonging at a local university or a local college. And these fools were like, "Are you going to do a land acknowledgement while we're in the Native American like little building?" I said, "No. Number one, I'm a descendant of slaves. I didn't take crap. My ancestors didn't even ask to come here. Number two, are you guys giving the land back? What am I supposed to acknowledge, that you have the land and you're not giving it back? I'm not doing this performative stuff. Now, if you guys want to do it, then, go ham. I'm not doing it." So let's be clear that, I'm on the West Coast. It's really, really, really liberal over here. DEI is absolutely retarded. Retarded. It's gone too far. It's too much. Okay. It's way too much. I'm uncomfortable and I'm black. I'm uncomfortable. This making me uncomfortable. I'm starting to have an issue, right? So I get that. However, 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 at the same time, this is not the business. That's why it's in red. That's a no for me. Okay. I can acknowledge that equity and inclusion has reached retarded proportions, and at the same time admit that racist individuals can exist in a school setting and that can result in disciplinary action, and people may not even be consciously racist. They may just have internal biases. I pointed out some of my internal biases right away, you know? So, tracking metrics need to happen. With that said, right? With that said, this idea that we're going to just do away with states considering race or ethnicity when they are identifying or placing or disciplining students with disabilities, like them no longer doing that is problematic. Because with that said, not tracking to see if there might be bias in your school, I think that that is problematic. I don't think you have to be retarded with it. You know what I mean? We don't have to make it literally like the air we breathe. It doesn't have to be the thing that is centered in our lives, but we can acknowledge that. We can keep an eye out for it. We can say we're not 100% there. Let's keep an eye on this and not act like we're literally functioning off of two brain cells at the same time. I think that that is a possibility. Like it's not a either or. We can walk and chew gum. We can act like adults and that we're sane. Now, when it comes to the disability portion of this, like I said, they are quick to say that somebody is mentally handicapped. And because a lot of people already think that Blacks are dumber than everybody else, a lot of those people will more easily believe that a Black child has a mental disability of some kind. So that is something that we have to keep a handle on. Um, they're trying to make it like they're doing it for the good of the student. So they're like, students should never be denied access to special education services because of their race or ethnicity. But this is happening in school districts across the country, right? That wasn't the intent of the regulation. They go on to say that this has made that the regulation makes the assumption that African American students are overrepresented or overrepresented. Can I talk? Are overrepresented in that area. I would actually agree with that. Now, I work with Black students, and so I want to say this. I do think, especially in severely urban environments, that there is a level of intellectual laziness in our students, and I find that is very prevalent in public school students. I notice there is a huge difference between a public school educated Black child and a privately educated at home Black child. When I am at the institute, the like at the beginning of the school year, the sharpest, quickest students are always the ones that are coming from a homeschool environment. We have to really work with students coming out of public school to bring them up to snuff. And I think it's because they're just being poorly educated in public schools, not because they're dumb, not because they're mentally disabled. I will run into parents in general who have had their kids in public school and have a IEP the length of a queen size bed. And they will literally start conversations with, these are all the things my child can't do. My child can't do that. My child doesn't understand this. I'm like, whoa, 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 chill. Let's work off the assumption that your child can, barring a severe mental retardation. Let's just imagine that your child can. And we just need to figure out, how does your child learn, right? We need to figure out if your child has been getting proper attention. But if we start from a place that assumes that something is wrong with your kid, you know what I mean? Yes, exactly. They're being told that they're stupid. They're being told that they're slow. So, this is why I have a problem with this. Because it is possible Black children are being overrepresented. I don't think public schools are the best places for Black children in a lot of cases. What I can say, and I want to find this footage. Man, I want to find this footage. Uh, Let me find this really. Okay, yes, yes. St. Mary's Academy in New Orleans. Yes, baby. Let's do this. Okay. I'm about to pull this up right now. I'm going to give you guys a perfect example of what I mean. A perfect example of what I mean. This is a great story. I actually want to do a video like just on this. I'm about to show you exactly what I mean. This is how I know they're overrepresented. All right, so I'm going to close that up, and then it's going to be St. Mary's, New Orleans, and then here we go. Right here. Let's do it. Now, this might cause this whole video to be a problem, but hold on. We're going to stop that screen share. We're going to present another. Darn. Okay, you guys, I do have YouTube Red. I do, I promise you. But I cannot show it because it's under my account for my channel, and um unfortunately I'm not able to share the sound if I go to that tab. So we're going to have to kind of deal with some advertisements, and I apologize ahead of time. All right, so let me share my screen now.
On St. Mary's Academy, a Catholic school for young African American women in New Orleans.
Eventually, it creates this larger waffle cone shape. Am I going a little too?
You've been beyond me since the beginning.
Oh.
We met two former St. Mary's students, Kelsey Johnson and Nakia Jackson.
All I did is just drew a circle and put a triangle in there.
Who made math history when they both independently proved a 2,000-year-old theorem with methods thought to be impossible. You were not shocked.
No, we were not shocked. Our students can do anything. And that's what we tell them. You know, the sky is the limit, and we want to be up there with you.
Congratulations, ladies. We are almost there.
Pamela Rogers is principal of St. Mary's, and she told us all the students at St. Mary's are exceptional.
Nakia Jackson.
For the last 17 years, St. Mary's has had a 100% graduation rate and a 100% college acceptance rate.
What did he say? A 100% graduation rate, a 100% college acceptance rate. I'm going to skip ahead.
The express purpose of educating young African American women.
That's correct.
From the very beginning.
That's right.
So what were the guiding principles of the school then and now?
The guiding principles actually remain the same. We teach young women to give service, to empower themselves, to be in the community. We teach them to grow spiritually, intellectually, and just really to be good people and give to one another.
Katrina. She spent the first year of her life in a FEMA trailer on the family's front lawn. You both were born the year of Katrina?
Yes.
Has that had an impact on your schooling?
Definitely. The elementary side, the building was so damaged that they had to be in trailers. So for my elementary schooling, I had to be in those trailers.
You started school here in trailers.
Yep.
And now I look here and you've got this
yeah.
beautiful new school. Eventually, St. Mary's prevailed.
Torn down.
Naliska Jackson, mother of math superstar Nakia Jackson, was pregnant with Nakia when Hurricane Katrina hit. She evacuated New Orleans and gave birth to Nakia in Georgia a week later. And she was premature
Yes,
at
she
what,
was.
7 months?
Yes.
Do you think that was because?
So you have premature babies, children that have grown up with challenges, at a school with 100% graduation, 100% college acceptance rates, solving math problems.
Here in trailers.
Yep.
And now I look here and you've got this
yeah.
beautiful new school. Eventually, St. Mary's prevailed. It has a new building and has expanded enrollment for pre-K through 5th grade. Environmental engineering at Louisiana State University, scholarship at Xavier, far short of what it was before Hurricane Katrina. Last year, Kelsey and Nakia graduated. Nakia has a full ride scholarship at Xavier University in New Orleans. Kelsey is studying environmental engineering at Louisiana State University.
I want to be able to come back and help the New Orleans community since they helped raise me, helping with.
So long story short, I don't know. Is it just magic that every single Black child at that school graduates and has 100% acceptance rate? Or is it possible that the system is broken? Is it like the Project 2025 says that African American that it is an incorrect assumption that African American students were disproportionately overrepresented, right? And that overrepresentation required amelioration? Is that really the problem, or is the problem that they really are overrepresented? And I would argue the problem is they really are overrepresented. These kids are not dumb. These kids are very intelligent. I don't think that my children are exceptional. I think that my children are the norm of possibilities for Black children. I don't think those girls are exceptional. I mean, those girls might be exceptional, but they solved a math problem that no one thought was possible to solve, each of them, right? But my point is that this is why I disagree with, it's a charter school. That is a charter school, I believe. It might be a private school, but I believe it is a charter school. I could be wrong. So that's why I don't really get with this whole part of it. It says the next administration should immediately commence rulemaking to rescind the equity in the IDEA regulation. No replacement regulation is required. All right. So why does it say do not use federal mills to support racial ideology? I'm so done. Like this is some of the stuff you can see in education. I redlined a lot of stuff. I know yesterday you guys were like, she just loves everything about Project 2025. I think in the Department of Education section, there were a lot of things I had a problem with. So let's try to get through it. I'm going to try not to take all day here. All right. So provide school meals to children in need. Do not use federal meals to support radical ideology. So in May 2022, the U.S. Department of Agriculture tried to advance a radical political agenda using the federal school meal program. Really radical with food. Nearly a century ago, federal lawmakers adopted the National School Lunch Program. and school breakfast program, and other services that provide meals for K through 12 students to give children from low-income families access to food while at school. Since the 1940s, federal lawmakers have greatly expanded these meal programs, creating an entitlement for nearly all students, regardless of family income levels, and have turned the meal programs into some of the most wasteful federal programs in Washington. Now, the USDA is threatening to withhold federal taxpayer spending for these meals from schools that do not implement Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972 so that the term sex is replaced with sexual orientation. Okay, let's be clear. I agree with this part of it. Give them the money. I disagree with this part of it. Frankly, I think our food quality is very low in the United States. Have any of you guys ever seen those videos where they're like showing meals for like students in Korea or something? And then it's like a whole real meal. Is it just me? Has anybody ever seen those videos? It's like a whole gourmet meal made from scratch for less money than the mess we feed our kids. So, in that vein, I think that food should just be available at schools. That's what I think. I think that food, wholesome food, not the mess that they are feeding our kids now, but actual food where chefs who know how to cook are cooking food from scratch because it's cheaper in the kitchen, should be available to our children, regardless of income. That should just be part of the educational experience. Because even if kids have money, that doesn't mean their parents are going to send them with healthy food. Some of these parents with money, they don't really want to be bothered with their kids. They're not even doing anything like that. And the children should have the option to eat healthy food at school. However, I do agree that we're not holding back money for food because a school doesn't want to conform with sexual orientation and gender identity politics. So I have a love-hate relationship or a hate-love relationship based on the way the colors show up with this. It says phase out existing income-driven repayment plans. While income-driven repayment, IDR of student loans is a superior approach to relative to fixed payment plans, the number of IDR payments has proliferated beyond reason. And recent IDR plans are so generous that they require no or only token repayment from many students. The Secretary should phase out all existing IDR plans by making new loans, including consolidation loans, ineligible and should implement a new IDR plan. This new plan should have an income exemption equal to the poverty line and require payments of 10% of the income. Really, 10%? God share? Above the exemption. Oh, above the, okay. If new legislation is possible, there should be no loan forgiveness. But if not, existing law would require forgiving any remaining balance after 25 years. I mean, I'm not going to get into that because I explained yesterday how I feel about student loans in general. So I'm not going to go on another rant. The National Assess, and I also explained that kind of at the beginning of this live too. The National Assessment of Education Progress and other data collections currently release data by race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, English language proficiency, disability, and sex. However, one of the most important, if not the most important factor influencing student educational achievement and attainment is family structure. As an education scholar, Ian Rowe has noted, NAEP already collects data on students' family structure. It just does not make that data publicly available. The Department of Education, or whichever agency collects such long-term data, collects data long-term. I think it's the same. Hold on. You know what, y'all? My daughter's friends have my number, and I promise you these kids are always texting me, but they think they're texting each other. I know too much about their little teenage conversations. The Department of Education or whichever agency collects such data long term should make all student data available by family structure to the public, including as part of its Data Explorer tool. I agree. I agree. It's just that simple. It goes on to say data collection efforts in higher education should be improved by housing higher education data at the Department of Labor. This will provide more transparency in elevating the post-secondary education and workforce training program outcomes, contextualize those results based on trends observed more generally, enable the adjusting of real wages to account for regional differences in earnings and cost of living, and develop a reliable methodology for risk adjusting institutional and program outcomes more accurately to reflect the value added of education programs as opposed to their admission selectivity. It goes on to say that graduation rates and average earnings operate like as proxies for educational quality, and that they don't think these outcomes are anything more than being dependent on socioeconomic background, sex and family status. By family status, they mean is there a mother and father in the home. And it goes on to say that when there are colleges and universities that have selective admissions policies, they have strong outcomes because they are kind of what we were talking about earlier, picking only the cream of the crop. And that when we see open enrollment colleges, what we are finding is those students are not the cream of the crop. And so because they are not the cream of the crop, they tend to have lower, they have poorer results, basically. And then they go on to explain, like, a child who needs more assistance because, they have to drop out due to work or medical bills or something like that, it makes it difficult to isolate what the real impact of the quality of an educational environment versus what is just problematic because of socioeconomic status. It goes on to say that, when people are socioeconomically disadvantaged, they tend to eat worse. They tend to have poor exercise habits. They tend to be on drugs. And they compare this to like if you have a hospital, right? So if you have a hospital serving poor people, you'll get a lot of people who are in terrible conditions, and the hospital might have poor outcomes. But when you have a hospital that, has rich people coming, they will seem to be getting more care because the people are rich and are going to have better outcomes. Now, I understand what they're trying to say, but for real, I mean, I get it, y'all. I get what they're trying to say. I do get what they're trying to say, but like seriously though, I guess this is another one of those situations where I think it's like a both and thing. So they're basically saying you can't trust the metrics because it's not just about if somebody is getting provided a quality education, that there are other factors that impact that. The thing is, they're not leaving room for the fact that you really could just be getting a poor education. And maybe it's not even the student's fault. Maybe it's the teacher's fault, right? Maybe teachers at open enrollment schools are held less accountable, and so they provide poor service. Maybe that's it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's not the student's fault. Maybe it's not because the student is poor. Maybe doctors, where there are rich people, know that these people have the money to sue them. And so they do their best work because they don't want to lose their medical license, because they know if they screw up with somebody that is worth millions, the consequences are going to be far greater than if they do the wrong thing with a patient that came off of the streets and is homeless. So, okay, it could be that the results are skewed because of the student. It could be that the results are skewed because of the way that people treat individuals that they deem to be less than. Could be either or. You know, it also could be that people with socioeconomic depression do have, eat worse, might be on drugs, blah, blah, blah. It could be all that too. I don't know. I just, oh, goodness sakes. You know what I'm saying? The thing is that I can admit that both things can be true. They can't even conceive the other side of the coin. That the institution, or at least the people in the institution, can be part of the problem. Hence why we collect data. This is more back to the loan forgiveness program. They just want people to pay, y'all. They want you to pay and pay. And they do not want any loans, right, that are going to be forgiven based on trade. In addition to that, this goes back to them wanting to bring in third parties, right? They say that essentially the federal government does not have incentives like a private company to make sound lending decisions. So they want to consider returning to a system where there are private lenders and the federal government just guarantees their loans. This is just a money grab right here. This is how I view this, is a money grab. They want basically lenders to provide the loan so that they can make money, and then if somebody defaults, the federal government will pay the lender. I don't agree with that. We're doing too much with Fannie Mae. We see how Fannie Mae rocks. We're not going to do that with student loans. I don't think that is a good idea. Yeah. That is the aspect too. Parents aren't doing as well with their kids these days. We know this because these kids are out here running wild. All the kids, let's be clear. Because in my area, there was a little brawl between some white boys and white girls. My husband sent me the video. He said this wasn't the one by our house. It was a little store downtown. They were out there fighting. I'm like, where are these people's parents? This reminds me of something, and this is why a lot of white people don't believe in white privilege. My eldest daughter came to me and she was like, "Mom, I don't know why there's a stereotype that Black people are the ones that are pouring on drugs." She's like, "All the people I see that are pouring on drugs are white." Y'all, I was like, but still my heart. She was trying to figure out where the false assumption that it was Black people that were having these problems came from, because all the Black people she knows are educated with money. She's like, how? When we are out on the town, it's a bunch of white people out here homeless and whacked out on drugs. Why do they keep saying it's our people? So what am I making that point for? Oh, that's this little funny story, just so you guys know. I said that's a good point. Anyway, switch to fair value accounting from and look, somebody, somebody non-Black is going to get a hold of this, or some Black that's checking and driving is going to get a hold of this and be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that." I listen to conservative channels all the time talk about the degeneracy of Black people. And what's funny to me? Okay, I'm going to do a whole series, you guys, called The Conservative Audit, where I audit popular conservatives and like their hypocrisy. But what's really funny to me is violent crime is a problem that Black men have statistically. And they will say it's not racist, it's just a fact that Black men are more violent. But when it comes to the Skittles Committee and the trans people and the gays, most of these people are white, but that's not a white problem. That's not white degeneracy. And see, it's that kind of hypocrisy I can't stand. Why is it racial when it's Black people, but then it's just gender ideology when it's white people? Because there are violent white people, but we're calling it a Black issue because most of the people are Black. Well, I would like to call transgenderism and homosexuality a white issue because most of the people are white. I just want us to stay intellectually honest. Do you know what I mean? Black men have a problem with violence, and white men have a problem with sexual degeneracy. All right? Look, if we're going to be conservative, let's be honest across the board. And I think that is where, because somebody wanted me to talk on Candace Owens, and I won't get into it now, that's where Candace Owens went wrong. Is she shucked and jived so hard against the Black community. And in order to make herself okay with what she was doing, she tried to make believe that that could be equally applied. And she couldn't come for white people because she's got her tongue too far up their butts. So she came for the Jews, and then what she found out was they hold the purse strings. And then she had her little epiphany and all of a sudden wanted to be Black and start visiting Black shows and talking to Black people. You know what I mean? And then leaning on her Christianity heavily. If you can call Catholics Christians, because that's something else. Mind that the Jews and the Catholics roll hard together. Mind that, right? Not all the Jews, a specific sect of Jews. But never, them, the Catholics are tight, like Matt Walsh, Catholic, right? Candace Owens, Catholic. You name me a conservative of that ilk, and I'll show you a Catholic. let me say that. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting off track, y'all. But I plan to do a whole series called The Conservative Audit, where I like pick all this stuff apart. And I show that they are very careful with their words, and I'm not. And maybe if I wanted to mainstream myself, I could more diplomatically state some of this stuff. But I don't care about that. This is my hobby. But I feel like they're intellectually dishonest at the end of the day. So let me get back on track because we're talking about Project 2025. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that. All right. So, they want to consolidate all federal loan programs into a new program that uses income-driven payment. I think that makes sense, depending on what the scale looks like. Includes no interest rate subsidies or loan forgiveness. I think there should be loan forgiveness in situations. Like I said, if we are very short on engineers, we can't just keep importing talent. That is what is wrong with this country, is most people, look, and I don't have anything against immigrants. I have a problem with illegal immigrants, but I don't have anything against people who have immigrated here legally. So please, I'm saying what I'm about to say with that caveat. However, we cannot be the United States if we keep importing millions of people who are not American. We lose American culture when we keep importing in large numbers people from other countries because they bring their culture with them. You don't get an Americanized individual until like the third generation. And I'm going to tell you guys something really controversial. This is how y'all know. Y'all are going to be like, years ago, I was on a somebody else's channel, and somebody got mad at something I said and was like, conservative chip activated. I guess this is going to be one of those moments. I don't even believe that people who, I'm gonna just say it, y'all. I think this is something that you guys don't know. I don't think I've ever said this out loud before to you guys. I don't believe that people who are less than third generation American should be able to hold public office. Yes, I said it. I said it. I said it. I said it. I don't think that they should be able to be president unless they are at least third generation American. I think that it makes our government vulnerable when people who are immigrants, or who have parents who are immigrants, get into government. I think our government should be compiled of American people who are naturalized over generations. And I also think that if we don't have student loan forgiveness, that there will be people who could be talented to fill positions that are necessary for our country's growth in technology and in the medical field and other areas, research areas. And we will end up importing non-American people to fill those jobs. So I think there should be a level of loan forgiveness so that we can have American people take high-level jobs that require extensive educational backgrounds. I'm just saying. Oh, you think second generation? I know. Exactly. I don't believe Kamala Harris should be president. I absolutely don't believe she should be able to be president. If I'm more upset about anything when it comes to Kamala Harris, it's that she is the daughter of two immigrants. And that is just freaking wild to me. It's wild to me, y'all. The fact that we can have a president who has no American parents like that? Oh, hey to the nay. Nah, that's insane. That is crazy, man. That is highly inappropriate. That should not even be legal. That should be illegal. Okay. You got jokes. We gotta leave that comment up a little bit. Look, it should be illegal. Like, when I get in my little video about Kamala Harris, it's going to be based around the fact that she is the least American individual. Like, what in the world? Do we really want a person with two immigrant parents running the free country? Being the most powerful person in the free world? Somebody that's not even, come on now. She wasn't even raised in America. This girl lived off in Canada somewhere. She is not American. She is American only by citizenship. She is not American by blood. She is not. It is not a vibe. It is a problem. Yes, you need somebody American. And I'm just saying, look, y'all, I love America. America is awesome. We have our problems, but let me tell you, we're better off than most. Now, there's a couple countries out there that are better than us. I'm gonna tell you, there's a couple countries out there that got it made better than Americans, and they don't have the stress that we do of having to fund everybody's wars and all that. But we're up there. We're up there. People would love to have an American passport. Anyway, With that said, what I mean by American by blood is I mean you have multiple generations of skin in the American game. That's what I mean American by blood. Is your family has multiple, not a couple, not one, but multiple generations in this country. That's what I mean by American by blood. That you have multiple generations in this country. Yeah, it shouldn't be that way though. You should not be able to run for office because you pay taxes. You should pay taxes because you're in America. And if you want to do business in America and be in America, then pay your taxes. If you have a tax identification number, if you don't have a tax identification number, you don't have to pay taxes. But if you have a tax identification number, then you better pay those taxes. I do agree with tenant number 4 that colleges need some skin in the game. See, when you take people to colleges, I mean, when you go to a college, anybody who's gone to college knows this. They have their little day and they offer you the sun and the moon and the stars. They'll be like, apply for this loan and apply for that loan. And there's this loan over here. You know how colleges are. They just want to get their money. They just want to get paid. They'll have these students up in there signing up for all the loans, trying to get all the money and sticking you with a whole bunch of debt. Colleges would not act that way if they had some skin in the game. If the loans you took out affected the college itself, they would not be so reckless in how they try to get students to sign up for these loans. They would not be so predatory with how they try to get students to sign up with these loans. Children that are fresh out of high school, they just have them signing on the dotted line. So I agree with point 4. That's why I have it in green. And again, I'm not going to go back to this like new government corporation with professional management that is chosen by the president. I'm just not with that. So I already talked about that the first time they brought it up. That's something else. This is really long because it's redundant. Like they say the same things over and over again. Like, y'all, I only need you to say it once. Okay. Just tell me one time, not 15 times. It's like a 900-page document because they just talk. You know, they just keep repeating themselves and going on rants. Congress should rescind the National Education Association's congressional charter and remove the false impression that federal taxpayers support the political activities of the special interest group. Absolutely. I can't stand the National Education Association. We ought not give them money. Let's disassociate from the National Education Association. They're doing too much. All right. Members should conduct hearings to determine how much federal taxpayer money the NEA has used for radical causes favoring a single political party. You know how I said that they get petty? This is petty. This in red. Look, I am for take the NEA's money away. All right, take the National Education Association's money away. They're trash. But do we really want to spend congressional time and taxpayer money after we tell, look, National Education Association, no more money for you. You're out. You're not getting any more money. So after we take the money away from them, why on earth are we going to waste time investigating how much? I mean, are y'all trying to sue them? Like, I don't understand. It's just a waste of time. It's petty. Let it go. You're not getting any money. Game over. You're unaffiliated with the United States government. Perfect. I think we can move on past that. Like all this extra petty stuff, I'm not really with it. Parental rights in education and safeguarding students. Federal officials should protect educators and students in jurisdictions under federal control from racial discrimination by reinforcing the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and prohibiting compelled speech. Specifically, no teacher or student in Washington, D.C. public schools, the Bureau of Indian Education Schools, or Department of Defense schools should be compelled to believe, profess, or adhere to any idea, but especially ideas that violate state and federal civil rights laws. This is all about critical race theory. So they are saying that white people should be protected under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that critical race theory violates that. So first and foremost, let me say, Mr. is all in the critical race theory bag. He's about that life. You guys have heard Mr. and me on here debating it. I don't rock with critical race theory, but I also don't rock with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 being used as a protection for white people. Like, because that's not even what it's about. It wasn't for that. That's not what it was for. Okay. And white people literally have the most power. White men have the most power in this entire society. So even when we are looking at, let me put this another way. You know that weird situation that I described earlier when I was at the when I was at our funders little informational about their grant? All those people were white. There were literally in that entire room less than 10 Black people and about 150 white people. They were land acknowledging to themselves. They were racial flagging to themselves. It had nothing to do with us. I was highly uncomfortable personally. I felt like I was in Get Out. So it is wild to me that when white men and white people represent the majority of the power structure in this country, that they think that they need the protection of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Y'all are doing this to yourselves. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was to protect people from your power that they still have. Even the sheer idea that they don't, now don't get me wrong, you have random crazy people who have no power running around talking about how all white people are racist and all white people are evil and they're barely human, right? But these people have no power. They have zero. You know how much power they have? Zero. The ranting crazy Black lady at the liberal university has no power. She's even a minority population at the university that she's ranting at. She has no power. So we cannot use the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to enforce white people to not discriminate against white people. What the frick? What is this, the Twilight Zone? White on white discrimination? Is that what the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was? I don't understand that. I'm trying to understand that. You want to use the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to stop white institutions from discriminating against white people. Well, I tell you, I've seen it all. I mean, I've seen it all. I have seen it all. I mean, if it makes sense to them, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. It makes sense, but it's the lack of accountability for me because they won't call that a white problem, will they? We can clearly identify when another race is a problem, but we cannot identify that our race is a problem. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. And I can say that because I make accountability videos for Black people. I've yet to see white conservatives make accountability videos for them. Anytime they criticize their own race, the only thing they have to say is, we are too, self-critical. We are guilty of being too self-critical. We're too hard on ourselves. Really, that's all y'all do wrong, for real? We have girls lopping their breasts off and people flipping their, inverting their penises, but all you can think about that you do wrong as a race is you're too self-critical. Sexual degeneracy, nowhere on the radar. Don't see that. That's just not even there. Like, literally, our entire problem when it comes to the Skittles situation is based on white culture. It is a white issue. In the same way that they clearly understand that violent crime is a predominantly Black issue. If we're going to throw races around, you know what I mean? Now, I'm Christian, so I believe that all nations are one blood, but I'm just having the conversation. Just having the conversation that they want to have. All right. Right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are we going to do? Trump is a convicted felon, but I mean, it is political persecution. Let's be clear. He didn't become a convicted felon on his own. Like, multiple states tried to take him down. It was political persecution. It's unfortunate because I don't think that it's made their case any stronger to attack him in this way. I don't even like him as a presidential option, but it doesn't even matter to me because now the first time he ran, I liked Trump as a presidential option. I don't know. I think somebody got a hold on Trump. Y'all, he's not the same as you used to be. He's a different person. And I don't think he's a good different person either. He's a different person. I don't even think he's making decisions. Do you honestly think that Trump chose JD Vance? Does that even make sense? Somebody has Trump in their pocket. I think Trump has been humbled in the back scenes. Like, behind the curtain, somebody has humbled Trump. And Trump is just a little puppet. That's what I think is going on with him right now. They've brought him to heel. Absolute heel. Okay. I do think that critical race theory needs to stop spreading. I don't even like the idea of permanent racism. I don't even like the idea of it. At all. I just don't. I want to look at the tenets of critical race theory. Race is a social construct. That is true. Race is a social construct. It is. It's really funny. I said to one of my daughters, I said, she's proof that race is a social construct. because she's as white as her white friends. Her skin is just as white as theirs. If you put her hand in a circle and you didn't show those curls, you'd never know the difference. Race is a social construct. I'm also Christian. Like I said, I believe that God made all nations one blood. We all come from Adam and Eve. We're all just human. Any variations in our appearance that you see are microevolutionary in nature. Micro meaning they're small changes. We're still all human that happened because of the area of the world that we are from, et cetera, right? Adapting to environmental things over time. But, in addition to that, we know that there is a such thing as the Eve gene that codes for all the human variations, right? So we all have the possibility of being varied based on the Eve gene. And then when you add to that microevolutionary influence, such as, being in certain parts of the world, what you get is what we perceive as different looking people, but we're all just human. So I do agree that race is a social construct. It goes on to say, hold on, one of my girls has come home. The second tenet of critical race theory is that individuals can be racist and that the outcome of that is perpetuated in society through social processes that extend beyond individual actions through the establishment of cultural norms, rules, laws, regulations. And so it's not person to person racism. I'm going to tell you, I disagree with that. I think when I think of institutional racism, it's more like you go into a courtroom, that judge is racist. The bailiff may not be racist. The chick taking notes may not be racist. Half the people in the audience may not be racist, but the judge is a racist. That racist judge can do a lot of institutional damage, right? You get 2 or 3 or 5 racists together in the same institution, you can create institutional racism. I don't think that, like, a lot of times you'll hear conservatives say, what law applies to me that doesn't apply to you? What law prevents you from doing something that I can't do? Well, the laws are supposed to be equally distributed, right? So that's not something that can be answered. I guess the better question is, it takes just one racist individual with power to cause a problem. It just takes a handful of racist individuals in the same proximity to each other, the same institution, to cause institutional racism. You follow what I'm saying? So I agree in part, but I don't think that institutions are automatically racist. I think that an institution can have a number of racist people in that institution, and if they are in positions of power, it can then lead to institutional racism. But I don't think every institution in America is just racist by default. I think that's ridiculous. I don't believe every institution in our country is just racist. But I do think that you do have institutions where there's a few racists with power, and because they have the right amount of power in those institutions, that whole institution can become corrupt. The other tenet. Tenet 3. Because individuals are treated differently based on their racial classification, that racism then becomes embedded in social systems and institutions. And that extends to law and policy so that racism is commonplace, that there is structural racism. Again, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know if I can just look at the structure of the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and just see racism there. I challenge somebody to tell me what is racist about the DMV. I can go get my title just like anybody else. I can go get my license and registration together just like anybody else. I struggle to see how the Department of Motor Vehicles is racist. When I go into Safeway, I struggle to see how that grocery store is racist. And maybe somebody could tell me something I don't see. I don't know. I guess the question is, what do you consider redlining? Right? Because technically redlining is illegal. So I just want to talk about things that are happening now. Do you know of a place in the country that redlining is? Because I've already acknowledged that you can have an institution with racists in it, and that can cause institutional racism, right? But by default, I don't think that every institution is racist, right? So I don't think all institutions in America are racist by default. But I can acknowledge that institutional racism does exist under the conditions I just said, which is you get racists who have power in an institution, and through their choices and policies within the institution, create a climate of racism. Tenet 4. That, racism is perpetuated at the macro level in society. However, we have to listen to the lived experiences of individuals to understand how inequalities actually work when they're affecting people. And we also need to reframe our research on racism, right? We need better research. I agree, we need better research, but, I don't think that racism is permanent, and I think they go too far. I think it's more nuanced than that. Hold on. I'm gonna grab my battery for my computer. I mean, my plug for my Mac, you guys. And yes, going back to my rant about how I don't think people with immigrant parents should be president. This is why I never liked President. Second of all, he's not American. It's a problem. All right, moving on. For K through 12 systems under their jurisdiction, federal lawmakers should adopt proposals that say no individual should receive punishment or benefits based on the color of their skin. I would like to know what is defined as a benefit. What is defined as a benefit? That's very vague. What is defined as a benefit? Furthermore, school officials should not require students or teachers to believe that individuals are guilty or responsible for the actions of others based on race or ethnicity. I agree with that. I do, but then I also don't agree with it. So let me tell you why I had it read. This is why I have it read. Because this goes back to conservative hypocrisy, okay? When we look at the Cardi B's of the world, the Sexy Reds of the world, all of these people, can we all here agree that some of the gangster rap, I mean, I don't really listen to rap, so I don't know, who's a vile rapper, whoever these vile rappers are out here, that it's a problem, right? They will call that Black culture. They will call it Black culture. They will say what entertainers do for money is our culture. It's who we are, right? But if I were to say, then sexual perversion is Jewish culture because they run most of the pornographic outlets, or if I were to say that actually, since the Jews control most of the media and they pay Black people to be ratchet, that, you know, they have a culture of subversion, then I would be considered anti-small hat, right? I couldn't say that pornography is Jewish culture, could I? I couldn't say that whoredom is, you know, white culture because most of the people in porn are white women and white men. I couldn't say that. So I have to, as an individual Black woman, get thrown under the umbrella with Sexy Red and say that we have the same culture. But random Jews don't have to get thrown under the umbrella with the random Jews that own porn sites. And we can't call that Jewish culture. Random whites can't get thrown under the umbrella of transgenderism, where we say that they have sexual degenerate culture. You know, that's their, you know what I mean? Like it's funny how nobody else has to eat the degenerates in their race, and that's not their culture. But if it's Black people, it's our culture. We're either going to call out all of these cultural habits. You guys can't see me, but I'm doing quotations. We're either going to do like air quotes. We're either going to call out all these cultural habits or we're going to call out none of them. So there you go. Let's go forward. So it says, but I do think it's wrong to teach. And this is a conversation like that I've been having on this project that I'm working on. You know, we're calling for the city and the county to acknowledge the things that they've done wrong. But it's very clear that none of us were there to do it. You know what I mean? Like, none of us did it. We're just a part of this system, but we weren't there. We're all too young to have been there, right? So, yeah, I'm not personally responsible. You know what I mean? But that, you know, I'm not a slave, but my ancestors were. And just to be honest, I have an attachment to that. Like, I struggle with the fact that our people didn't just go on a killing spree nonstop so that they felt it was no longer worth going to Africa because Black people are too violent. I feel slavery went on so long because we weren't violent. I think if we, like I said, there's this bunny rabbit and it has really soft fur, but the reason we don't kill it and make nice fur coats out of it is because as soon as you catch it, the fur goes bad. There are some animals that we cannot domesticate. We would love to domesticate them, but we can't, right? I think that the Negro allowed ourselves to be domesticated. I struggle with that, even though I wasn't there. I wish that our ancestors had been so violent that it was simply not worth going back to Africa to catch anybody else or to purchase anybody else or to trade for anybody else. That we were just so uncooperative and so dangerous that they never considered picking up another African and putting them on a ship again. So I have feelings attached to the things and the decisions that my ancestors made. So I think in some ways we have to accept that white people are no different. It's nobody's fault if you have feelings attached to the things that your ancestors did. It's just what it is. Do you know what I mean? It's human nature. Now, do I think that we should be telling little white kids they're bad or telling little Black kids, stuff? I don't think we should be doing that, but I don't think that we should not tell them the truth because they might go, oh my gosh, that person looked like me and did that thing. I don't think we should hide the truth because somebody might struggle with the bad choices that were made of the past. Yes, and what's really funny, Free to Be, is I have a video that I did, some of you may have heard it, called Black People Are Very Forgiving. And I talked about, that we are forgiving, because if we weren't forgiving, it would have been on and popping. It would be on and popping right now. And do you know YouTube recently just removed that video? I've had people reach out to me and be like, is this video around anymore? No, y'all, the videos are not around. YouTube has been taking my videos down left and right. I kid you not. They've just been like swiping my videos. So like I'm in Dora the Explorer yelling, swipe or no swiping. Like they're just swiping. They're ripping my videos down off of YouTube left and right and left. Okay. They're going back into the archives of my videos and just snatching videos from years ago. It's crazy. Every single month, I have at least 1 or 2 videos that get removed. And not just demonetized, just deleted off of YouTube. They just delete the videos off of YouTube. So, well, Indy, maybe, but then once we got to America, what was the excuse? They didn't keep us chained up all the time here in America because we had to work. So what were we doing once we got into America? Where was the energy? All right. Educators shouldn't be forced to discuss contemporary political issues. I agree. I disagree with that. Yeah, nobody should have compelled speech. I agree with that. So we shouldn't be compelled to discuss contemporary issues. We shouldn't be compelled to say anything in education. I agree with that. Send your kid to the school that's going to teach them the way you want them taught, or homeschool. That's what I say. Work to pass a federal Parents' Bill of Rights that restores parental rights to a top tier right. Absolutely. These are our children. They are my children, not society's children. They are your children, not society's children. What we say goes, period. Further ensure that any regulations that could impact parental rights contain similar protections and require federal agencies to demonstrate that their actions meet strict scrutiny before final rule is promulgated. Absolutely. They want to be able to sue. See, this is part of that petty stuff right here. They want to pass a law so that all these parents that have been subjected to like critical race theory and all these students that have been subjected to like gender ideology can go back and sue. This right here is a waste of time. Also, when you sue, the taxpayers are paying for it. So that doesn't make sense. They probably already, if this actually got implemented, I guarantee you they already have lawyers and individuals that they can supposedly, you know, represent to just start suing right away. They're already teed up for it. Prioritize legislation advancing such rights. Promising ideas have appeared in bills introduced, blah, 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 blah. They just want you to have parental rights. This period. They want to look at these particular states that they like, their parental bill of rights. I'll turn this yellow. I don't necessarily agree with it. They think those states have good bills of rights. So I haven't read all of those states' bills of rights, so I can't agree or disagree. That's why I put it to yellow. They don't want teachers or contractors calling students outside of the name that's on their birth certificate unless parents say so. I agree. This is getting into gender ideology. They do not want anybody using pronouns on students that are different than their biological sex without parents saying so. I agree. Hold on, you guys. Or actually, let me wrap this up. Oh, I want to get through all this, but am I going to get through it? Where are we at? We're on page 346. How far do we have to go? So much. 346. We have 20 pages to go. Yeah. I'm going to have to, I don't want to break this up more. I just want to get this over with. Let's see. How long have we been going, you guys? I can't tell. How long have we been up here on this live stream? You know, it's because I keep getting sidetracked. It's all my fault because I keep getting sidetracked. Okay, so Parent Bill of Rights. Let's fly through it. Parent Bill of Rights, just they want parents to have rights. They want school choice. Basically, your child has a certain amount of money for tax dollars. In 2020, it was $22,000 they were using DC, almost $23,000 a year. School choice. You take it wherever you want to take it. Also a portion of, so you can go to any school you want, public or private or charter. Also a portion of the child's federal education monies can be used, and I thought this was really good, that's why I underlined it, to pay for personal tutors. So now you don't have to come out of pocket for that. That would come out of the money allocated for your child in education. And they would also do this for military families. They also want to design a federal education savings account option for all children. that are in those Indian Bureau of Education schools. So they would receive something different. This is kind of like the doulas for poor mothers and, paying mothers what you would normally pay a child care provider so that they can stay at home with their children. Some of these are really, really progressive ideas, and I love them. Like, yes, give parents money to pay for tutors. Yes, allow parents to take their money for their child's education to any school of their choice. That means if you have a Black child, you could pick the Zions Institute, and you could send your child there, and it would be paid for, right? Um, this is the same thing. It's just student choice, right? Then it talks about private school students and how that money could even be used for textbooks, therapies, tutors. This is kind of all the same thing. Also, if your child has special needs, you could get up to, $1,800 a child in these savings accounts to use for all of those things: textbooks, therapy, personal tutors, learning expenses. So you would have that $1,800 pot of money to spend on your child's education, and it would be up to you how that money would be spent. The same thing, they want to give homeschooling parents money. So there would be some monies that are allocated to homeschooling parents. So if you're homeschooling, you would get some federal dollars. They want to do the same thing for elementary and secondary education. So it's the same thing, just across the board for students. I love this. This is kind of all, they're just repeating it over and over again for each section of education, but that's essentially what it is. And I think that all of this is great. I have nothing against this. I think it is absolutely amazing. Also allowing states to opt out of federal education programs, right? Not to be forced to engage in certain federal education programs. They just want to put the control back in the hands of the states. And I really totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Take control, put control back in the hands of the states. They're back here again, protect the sovereignty of the states, right? Protect faith-based institutions, right? Do not hold religious institutions to standards that conflict with their beliefs. I agree with all of that. They want to change the way accreditation is done. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not sure. There's not enough information for me. I'm not familiar enough with that to really draw a decision. Remember I told you they're obsessed with privatization? Yes, they want to privatize everything. They're like literally obsessed with privatizing things. I don't agree with that. I just think that there's room for a lot of corruption when things get privatized. They want to consolidate the federal loan programs. I think that really is a good idea. I think it should be income driven. Again, I've already said I'm against loan forgiveness. This is a very redundant. Remember I told you they repeat the same things over and over again? I don't know why they just don't say it once and then say we would want it to apply to all these situations versus like saying it over and over and over and over. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessary. But yet they keep doing it. This is more about how they want to really limit people having their loans forgiven. It's talking about caps to indirect cost rates that are paid to universities. Um, I'm just not with this, private organizations funding research efforts. Um, and I don't know when this is getting into research. So they do some good stuff in the research area, capping indirect cost rates that are paid to universities so that it doesn't exceed that rate, that lowest rate that universities accept from private organizations that fund their research. Um, I don't believe in paying universities to do research. Let's just say that. That's why I had it read. I just don't believe in doing that. I don't believe in doing it. So I'm just not for it, period. This is back to accreditation. They're obsessed with the Chinese. The Chinese come up a lot. They think the Chinese are influencing higher education. I don't really want to get into this too much. But some things that I do love is gifts that are $2,500 or more, report them. We need to know where the money is coming from. We need to know who is paying money to our institutions. Also, they want to allow competency-based education. So if there is a training that can be given, right, versus taking a bunch of classes you don't need and getting caught up in the minutia of education, competency-based training, right? So there are like a lot of fluff programs. Like one of my kids in college has to take a ethnic studies course to graduate, but he's going into computer engineering. Why is he taking an ethnic studies course? That's a waste of time. Literally, there are like 8 classes he's required to take that have nothing to do with his degree. But they won't give him his degree unless he takes the classes. It's a problem. A competency-based university that would convert their courses to credit hours sounds like a dream to me. Same thing here. The so-called areas of studies programs that they're just forcing people to take. I'm so irritated with that. Like I was so discouraged for my child because I'm like, goodness, we have to take these dumb courses. Like what course are we going to take? Why does anybody need to take music? You know what I mean? Like that's a waste. You're going into computer science. We don't need an art class. We don't need, an Asian American studies class. I don't totally disagree with this. It's really the 40% of funding to international business programs. I think that's a pet project. 40% of the funding is too much, though. But I think there should be funding that goes toward it for sure. I think we need to be able to compete in a global marketplace. And I don't think that currently American students are ready to do that. Possibly. Yes, exactly. Um, They are really getting into guidance documents. They just want a bunch of revisions in the guidance documents, which is fine. If you're changing policy, change the guidance documents. They need to be updated. You know, I'm not going to rock with them on this civil rights stuff. I'm just not. The First Amendment does need to be protected. That's why that's in green. I agree with that. And I do think bachelor's degree requirements need to be minimized. And that a college degree should not be required for any federal job unless the requirements of the job specifically demand it. I think that that is appropriate. Every job does not need a bachelor's degree. If you're not doing something that really requires that degree, then if you're competent, you should be able to get hired. I think a lot of people would like that because how many people have been perfectly capable of doing a job but lack the degree so they couldn't get the job? We definitely have to remove that. We can get more people into the workplace doing these jobs without wasting their money going to get degrees that aren't even needed to do the job. This goes back to pupils' rights. You know, we've already talked about that. Again, this is a bit redundant. They want to develop a portal where parents will have access to information about what their rights are, so their rights cannot be abused. I love that idea. You know, they don't want any accreditation requirements, which is just wild. Like, we have to have accreditation requirements. But I am for like loosening school accreditation requirements. I think we kind of get into the weeds around here a little bit. They just think the list of approved accreditors is entirely too small to serve the mission of the diverse schools in the nation's capital. This is really, really specific. And, you know, I'm all over the place with this because I can appreciate what they're saying, but like there does need to be a standard. There definitely does. They kind of get into budget information. Again, they want to trim the fat. They're saying we're spending too much money on education. We were here in 1980. We're way over here in 2020. They want to eliminate competitive grant programs. They just want to get out of them completely. They want to eliminate. They don't want to create a pipeline from high school to college. They just think, let's eliminate that. They don't want to forgive any loans. They're like, let's eliminate that. I mean, we should try to collect money, but I'm like, seriously, there's no cases where it could be forgiven. Right? I'm actually okay with this one. I'm going to green this one. They basically don't want to give the parents of graduate students loans. I mean, undergraduate students loans. And I don't understand why we wouldn't want to give graduate students loans, though. You know, I think we should do this and not do the other. But they're basically just trying to find ways to save money in this last part. So that actually brings us to the end of the Department of Education. And I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back later tonight to do a video on Ballerina Farms. I was not sure if I was going to be able to get through that. I had to get through the end of that quickly. I could not get chatty about it. But you can download it, you can pause it and read it as well. And so with that said, you guys, I'm going to this part, TT, exactly. I'm going to get out of here. Let's see, what's the next section that we're going to do? Let's take a look. The next section we will do can be let's do the Department of, I think this will be a boring one, but let's do the Department of Housing and Development, mostly because it's short. So let's do that first. Yeah, let's do that first. Either that or the Department of Justice. I'll make a decision. You'll know because I'll put up the live and it'll have a name on it. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit later for my late night live stream.